So it's a great program. I'm really delighted to have you all here today, and I'm going to begin by introducing Russ Graney, who is the CEO of Aidin. Aidin being a very innovative company that is now working in healthcare to make health and healthcare services much better for people in great need of healthcare improvement. So without further ado, Russ, please come on up and tell us what your company does. Thank you. Thanks. It should be right here.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. My name is Russ Graney. I am the CEO of Aidin, which is a tool that hospitals use to connect their patients with the best nursing homes and home health agencies available to them. And the reason that I'm here is that all of us one day are going to have to choose a nursing home or a home health agency to care for a loved one. And it will be your mom or your dad, or your husband or your wife, and they will be sick, and you will be tired and overwhelmed. And I know this because I went through it with my uncle. And hospital staff couldn't tell us which providers were better than others. And in fact, this list of provider names, phone numbers, and addresses is all that they gave us. So honestly, using this, we just chose the provider that was closest to home. And as a result, my uncle didn't get the best care. And he was one of the 1 in 4 patients readmitted to the hospital from the post-acute setting. And we know that today, hospitals spend about $17 billion every year on preventable readmissions. So we've got to figure out a way to help hospitals get patients into the best quality post-discharge treatment centers available. And that's exactly what Aidin does. So Aidin is used by hospital staff to create and send referrals to these post-acute providers, who in turn receive them and review them and decide whether or not they can offer placement to this patient. And it turns out that implementing Aidin cuts out anywhere from about 50 to 65% of the time that people currently spend doing this work today. So that in itself is a big win. But I want to focus most of our time today talking about what we're all here about, which is open data. And so I'll remind you that this is all the information we had when I chose with my uncle. But it turns out that Medicare is actually collecting a fair amount of data about these nursing homes and these home health agencies. In fact, this is only about 1/3 of it on the page. There's a lot of stuff to look at. But the problem with this data is twofold. The first is its location. This data sits on a Medicare-run website that most people do not think to turn to when they are in the hospital in this kind of desperate and last-minute situation. The second problem is that this information for the average patient, it's kind of difficult to understand what's important and what's not. So how do these numbers help me make a decision versus just be a lot of data to try to absorb? And so what we did with Aidin was, first, we collected all this information. Second, we filter through it so that we can actually look at the specific kind of care that each particular patient needs and pull out the data points that are relevant to them, remove the ones that have nothing to do with them, and then display them so that patients can compare their various options. And to do that is our final piece, which was we converted all of this into one really simple page that patients can actually receive while in their hospital bed directly from the hospital staff member who's responsible for doing all this work. So not only are we now able to cut off about half of that person's time that they've done at the fax machine, the phone, trying to figure all of this out, we've also allowed them to provide a much better experience to the patient and to the family, and ultimately to the hospital as they make this choice. So one really essential part of Aidin is that all the pieces have to fit together. And I think this is potentially very unique in healthcare. This is kind of the classic challenge of healthcare, is how do you incentivize people to do the right thing? And it turns out that doing that is a little bit tricky. But what we were able to do with Aidin was use data to serve patients and families, to in turn serve hospitals by helping them actually connect their patients with better care so there are fewer readmissions and less expense. And finally, you might recall on that provider profile page I just showed, there were some pictures, there was a little map This is all information that the folks running nursing homes and home health agencies are eager to get in front of patients. They want to show off what their facility looks like, what their quality is, and we're the first time that they're able to do that in a very clean and efficient way. So this is my uncle. And when he was readmitted to the hospital, I spent 3 days online, on the phone, on the road, trying to gather information about our options. And it turned out that doing so led us to a better aide who kept my uncle out of the hospital ever since. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here to share a little bit about what we're doing with open data. I would look forward to sharing any more to tell you how Aidin is working to improve the quality of care that your loved ones one day will receive. Thanks so much.
Russ, thank you so much. And I should mention that, you know, we have wine and food to end the room until about 7:30, so there will certainly be time to catch people afterwards if you'd like to talk a little bit more about some of this great work. So Aidin, I think, is just a wonderful example of open data coming right down to the individual and making measurable, really important improvements in individual care and individual well-being.